I recently was reminded again of the fact that, dude, we need so much more rest than we think we need. And oftentimes we think of rest as just that physical rest, but actually there's 7 different types of rest, and those 6 other types of rest are just as important as physical rest, especially during this time of the year. So this week's Rewind is all about the 7 different types of rest because I remember when I first did this podcast and I was just like, yo, this is so important. And now I'm thinking about being the holidays, this time of the year. I think this is even more important for us to make sure that we're getting the 7 different types of rest that will help us function at our best. And isn't that what we want? Especially during the holidays. So sit back, relax, and learn about rest.
You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and today's confession is I am like freaking tired. Like, I am so tired. I don't even know what to say. And I don't know, I gotta believe I'm not alone. I gotta believe I'm not the only one who's like, I've gotten the 8 hours of sleep. I've meditated. I sat and binge watched, this new show that I started watching on Hulu. And I've done nothing. I've sat and just sat here, and yet I'm still freaking exhausted. If that's you, let me know, because I want to know that I'm not alone. But I also wanted to figure out there's got to be something wrong with what I'm doing. And I realized after doing some research, and as someone who believes in rest and believes in recharging, and I still felt exhausted, something wasn't right. We try to get those 8 hours of sleep. We try to do nothing. We meditate more. But are you still tired? Most likely you're suffering from rest deficit and don't even know it. I know I am. I am a card-carrying case of rest deficit. And I thought it was all about sleep until, reading Dr. Sandra, I'm going to botch her name. I have a tendency to do this. Sandra Dalton Smith's book, Sacred Rest. So I was reading her book, and I'm telling you right now, I am really tired. So if I look like the struggle is real, let me help you out. The struggle is freaking real, and I'm trying to pull through. But I've always had an issue with sleeping. I wasn't a kid who liked to sleep. I always felt like I was missing out on something, and I think that a lot of us kind of did that. We feel like we're missing out on something, and even if we don't physically think we're missing out on something, we mentally, our minds are constantly going, so we're not really getting the rest we needed. I remember one time, I could barely speak. I literally thought I was becoming stupider. I don't even know if that's a word. I think it is. And I just couldn't come up with, phrases. I couldn't think of basic things. And I got tested. I did a day-long test and cognitive testing, and I'm like, oh my God, I have some disease. Something's happening horribly wrong with me, but they're going to give me this pill. Maybe I'm going to need surgery. Maybe I have a brain tumor. And it came out that I had sleep deficit. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. I'm like, nothing so major. And then, I started working on it and trying to get more sleep. And then I found out it's sleep apnea, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's why I'm always tired. Got the machine, and I'm like, okay, I'm still tired. So I'm getting more sleep. I'm using the sleep pap machine, and I still don't feel like I'm rested. And then I realized that I've been doing what I call fake resting. I thought I've been resting, and I was very proud of myself telling people, oh, self-care is all about, taking time for you and resting and whatever. And, I was doing I don't know, I was getting off of social media, which is good. It is a part of, whatever. But I was, well, that's a lie. I wasn't getting off social media. Under my fake resting, I was still scrolling through social media as I was binge watching TV, as I was checking news in the middle of commercials. I was thinking about everything under the sun. And in my mind, I'm like, but I'm just sitting here, or I'm listening to music and I'm dancing and thinking about, oh, this would be good for, another podcast episode. And that's not resting. And let me be clear, another thing, because one of the misconceptions, one of the huge misconceptions most of us have, is that we think that rest is sleep. Sleep is a form of rest, but it's not just rest. Rest isn't just sleeping and doing less and not being active. Oftentimes we think anything that's not work or our normal work is considered rest. And I hate to sit here and blame the Bible, but I'm going to blame the Bible for 1 minute. So all those Christians out there, don't come hunting for me. I have a point behind this. So if you look at the Bible, if you know anything about the Bible, I'm not saying I'm know everything, but in the Bible, in, I think first chapter, Genesis, whatever, it talks about God. And, God talks, God talking about the importance of rest. And, the creator of the universe rested, from the act of work or creating on the seventh day. And so God rested. And it talks about how important rest was to God, that he made this whole seventh day that we're supposed to rest and not do anything. We're gonna stop creating. And I think that made us in our mind believe that, okay, rest just means, anything that, again, is not part of our normal work lifestyle. And that's what rest is. And it's not. Rest isn't just sleeping. Rest isn't just doing nothing or doing less. There's so much more to rest. And that's what I love about this book, Sacred Rest by Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, is that it's more. She talks about there's 7 different types of rest. And I didn't even know there were 7 different types of rest that we need to survive. But, again, if we only think that rest is just about sleep and doing nothing, then yeah, we're not getting it, because we don't even know that we're in a rest deficit, and that we're suffering because we don't even know that there is another one. So I want to help first starting off with, what is the real definition of rest? So if it's not, rest isn't just sleep, or rest isn't just, anything that's not part of our normal working schedule, what is rest? So the way she describes rest is it's a restorative activity that helps us recharge and pour back into our lives in 7 different areas of our lives. So again, rest is a restorative activity that helps us recharge and pour back into 7 different areas of our lives. And that is something most of us are like, I'm not ready to do. I'm not ready to do, because we're a society who prides itself on, oh my God, I'm hustling hard. I work hard, I play hard. But do you ever hear that phrase? I work hard, I play hard. Ain't no talk of rest hard. There's no talk of resting hard, because we're so constantly going. We're on the hamster wheel of life, because that puts us in a status of, look at me. I'm working hard. I'm doing all these amazing things. I must be doing great because I'm living the American dream. And we're constantly busy. I'll be the first one to admit, I'm always constantly busy. Even when I think I'm resting, I'm not resting, because, again, I'm scrolling through something. Like this morning, I got up and I was like, okay, I'm going to work on the podcast and I'm going to do this other things, but I'm going to rest for a second. And what is the first thing I did? I'm going through and try to get through my daily challenge of solitaire, which all of a sudden I recently have gotten addicted to solitaire, and it's a hot mess. And I'm in the midst of doing this, I'm like, sis, what are you doing? This isn't rest. This is not rest. You continue moving your mind. And after knowing about the 7 different areas of rest, I was like, you're still doing it. Then that's because we constantly need to be busy. We're so used to being stimulated. I think we live in a world where we're overstimulated, but we don't even realize we're overstimulated. And then we always have this feeling like, I ain't got time for rest. I know rest is important. I know it's powerful. I know even in the Bible, it says the 7th day God rested. So if he needed to rest, why should I not need to rest? But we still don't. We don't take time to rest. We don't take time to stop doing. We have these relationships are strained. And, I encourage you to think and ask yourself, is that working out for you? Is that really the life that you kind of want to have right now? Or do you want better? Or do you just always want to be exhausted and still be functional, because you're basically being functional burnout. Do you always want to just produce and be unhappy and, produce and be constantly exhausted? If that's the case, continue being what, most people deem as a functional but chronically tired and burnt out individual. That's not the way I want to live. It's not it's the way I have been living. I feel like many women, especially women who deem themselves as strong women, are functional burnouts. We continue to produce. We continue to be, on top of everything. We got this. We got this. But at the same time, we are exhausted. I am so tired. My eyes hurt. And it's not tired that I need to sleep. It's other parts of the 7 areas of my life that I haven't rested and I have a major deficit and I haven't tried to address it. So if you're anything like me and you're suffering from rest deficit, but you don't know it, you don't understand rest or the true power of rest, I really wanted to break down these 7 different areas that Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith talks about. And before, I even go any further, I wanted to kind of also preface that, she's not just some, person who has this doctor name in front of her. She is a board certified internal medicine physician. She's a real doctor. And, she's, has this amazing TED Talk you can find online. But her book about sacred rest and the recovery, your life, renew your energy, restore your sanity is everything. And even if you don't want to read the book, this podcast will at least give you, some help to figure out what are the 7 areas and how can you actually start getting the rest you truly need, if that's something you want. If it's something you want, continue listening and watching this podcast. So let's get into it. So, okay, each day we use energy. Everything we do is energy. Every activity, whether it's thinking, whether it's physical movement, everything we do is using energy. And we usually deplete 1 or 2 types of energy a day and just in doing basic activities. So for me, I consider myself a creative. And so I'm constantly thinking of different things I can do to help, again, with this wellness revolution that I'm trying to create for women of color. I'm, constantly thinking about, oh my God, I'm taking care of my parents. Are they doing okay? Do I need to get them food? Do I need to cook for them? Do I need to clean something? Are my niece and nephews okay? Oh, I need to exercise. All these, mine is constantly going. There's many different ways that we exhaust different energy. And, even though we think that we're getting that sleep, we're not. That's not enough. And so the basic type of rest, so there's 7 different types of rest. So let me just kind of run through them. So the first one is physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual, creative, and I am so missing one. No, that's right. Oh, sensory. That's the 7th. So those are the 7 different types of rest. I had to write them down because I'm a little tired. But the first one we kind of all know about, and it's easy to get. And I think it's one of those ones that it's a kind of a no duh factor. Most of it is physical rest. And that's the one that we think about. When we think of rest, we think of sleeping and napping, which is passive physical rest. There's actually 2 different types of physical rest. There's passive and there's active. So in passive physical rest, it's taking a nap. It's, sleeping, it's hanging out in a hammock. It's just chilling, doing absolutely nothing. But then there's also active physical rest. And that's just as important. And that's rest that, helps us restore. It's activities that are restoring and helping us improve our circulation and our flexibility. So think of yoga, stretching, going for a walk. And so resting and physical, it doesn't mean we just need to stay still. It's not just about stopping, even in the physical rest. And that's why I wanted to point out that there's the active physical rest is just as important as the passive physical rest. And movement is important, and it helps us clear out different parts of our body, inflammation. And that's why I also like doing Reiki, because it's a way of, clearing out, the body. And, that's why it's important to do, stretching, walking, and moving. And so that is active physical rest is just as important as passive physical rest. And that's one we typically get. And that's one I feel like people are like, oh, I got it, getting enough sleep, getting, some exercise, moving my body. One of the ones I think people kind of know but don't really work on is mental rest. An example of mental rest is I think about, I am known, just opening it up right now, as someone who has a computer, like hella computer tabs open on their computer. Because I always feel like you never know. I'm going to forget that I need this. And so I will have like maybe 60, 70, and then another window open, another 50 of tabs open. But people also have like computer tabs open in their mind. So it's like when your mind feels like you have hella computer tabs open, you have all these things you're thinking about, you're always constantly thinking, and you're not allowing your mind to rest. It makes it hard to concentrate, when the mind is constantly going. And we need that mental rest. We need those moments where we just quiet the mind. Often known as being mindful. People use meditation as a form of mental rest, which is great. But oftentimes in meditation, people are going through their mind and thinking all these different things. And one thing I would give as a tip is, even if you're using meditation as a way to mentally rest your mind, but you have all these things going in your mind, try focusing on one thing, focusing on one word. And that's just in general. Focus, whether you're meditating or not, focus on one thing, focus on one word, and allow your mind to just kind of mentally rest from the noise and instead focus on one thing. I love doing short, like intentional breaks. Like I'll do dance breaks as a way to kind of mentally rest my mind. If I'm like constantly thinking about something or working on something and trying to solve a problem, I'll just do a dance break, or I'll just do a break and just stop. And that's so important, to kind of give yourself that time to just stop thinking, or even stopping to think, at the end of the day. I like to stop from work, and how I kind of stop from work and transition into my evening, activities is I'll stop my work day and I will sit there and literally cut off all electronics and do nothing. But also what I'll do is I'll record like my top wins. Like what was my wins for the days? What are like 3 good things that happened throughout the day? And I found that has really helped me in kind of shifting my mind from work mind into more restful mind. Also something I like to do is at night, because I do have a tendency to the mind's constantly going like on a hamster wheel, I do a brain dump. A brain dump, whatever I'm thinking about, get it out there. There's something powerful about putting it out on paper and getting it out of your mind, which helps you, clear out those thoughts and, clear out that mental clutter. And that's why I also say, focusing on one single thought also, again, helps with that mental clutter and kind of clearing that out. And so we just need that. Having your mind constantly go, it's not, even if you're sitting there watching TV or sitting there, resting and watching and just watching, the sky or watching the, river or whatever it is. If your mind is constantly going, that's a form of rest that you're not getting. And that's when you're having a rest deficit. And so mental rest is just as important as physical rest. And, going on to the third topic is emotional rest. And what is emotional rest? Emotional rest is allowing yourself to be vulnerable and authentic. And like example, someone who probably is having issues with emotional rest. Think of that friend who hides her real emotions. We all have one of those friends. We may even be that friend. Everything is great. She's on top of everything because she's a strong Black woman. Like she's got this. She can handle everyone else's, responsibilities, and she's on top of everyone else. She's that friend you go to for everything. She's that person that people depend on. She's just that ride or die person. But in reality, honey, She is struggling. She is dying inside because she feels like she can't tell anyone her true feelings, because she can't say, if someone asks, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm not okay, because people depend on her. So she feels like I have to say, oh, I'm good. Everything's wonderful. My life is amazing. She doesn't allow herself to be honest with other people. So she's not being honest with herself. And then she's not getting the rest that she needs by telling her truth. She doesn't feel safe to let people in and fully see her. That felt deep because that felt like me. And I find people pleasers are often people who have this emotional rest deficit because there's no boundaries. They don't know how to say no. They don't know how to say, sorry. I don't want, not even sorry. They're saying sorry all the time for things that even they're their faults, and they're not saying no when they really want to say no. They're saying yes constantly, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting not being you. I think even if you look at code switching at your job, when you can't be fully who you are because you have to be a certain way or have to look a certain persona, as an entrepreneur, you want to be the perfect mom, you want to be the perfect employee. When we're playing those roles that we often find ourselves playing in life, you can't have that emotional rest of being your authentic self. And that stress of holding us back, it's just, it's a lot, kids. It's a lot. It's a lot. One of the things I love, I heard Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith say, it's like putting makeup on our emotions. I think we put makeup on our emotions all the time. And those are the personas. Oh, that's a good podcast. But it's those personas that we, put on. And if we don't have people in our lives that we can just take off all the makeup and just be authentically who we are, then you're never getting emotional rest because you're always on. Your makeup's always on. You're always like dolled up. We need to be able to be raw. We need to be able to be raw enough to be completely who we are, unapologetically, without feeling that we're going to be judged. And one of the ways I've been able to do this is by having my therapist. My therapist is someone who, I don't have to be a certain way. I used to try to be a certain way. I wanted my therapist to think I was doing good and all these different things. And look at me, I'm like an amazing patient. And then at one point I realized that's not helping me because I'm, again, putting on makeup for my therapist and I'm paying her. And so when I realized that it was better for me to be raw and be fully how I am and be authentic, then I was able to have a safe space where I could feel emotionally rested. Some people use life coaches. Some people have one or two people in their lives, which is great. And it may not be your spouse or your family members, because oftentimes, again, you may feel like you need to play a role, but finding not a crew, but finding just one or two people in your life where you could be fully yourself makes such a huge difference. And if you don't have that, another thing to do is just journal. Journaling my thoughts, having a space, again, safe space to feel like I can be authentically me, has been a game changer, and it has helped with emotional rest. And it's something that I encourage people to do. I encourage people, to be your authentic self. Ask yourself, how am I today? And be honest with you. And if you don't feel like you could be honest with someone else, be honest with you in a journal. How am I feeling? I'm not feeling okay. I'm not feeling okay because of this. I'm not feeling okay because of that. I am struggling at this. I am whatever, but be honest with yourself. I encourage also another way to, get more emotional rest is to let go of people pleasing. Let go of, feeling like you have to be that perfect person. Take off the makeup, sis, of the emotions and be you, even if it's only for one or two people. So ask yourself, what do I need right now? Does this charge me or drain me? Which also leads to the next level of rest is social rest. And I think that these emotional rest and social rest kind of go together. Social rest, which you would think is, resting from social media. No, social rest is allowing yourself to recognize which relationships recharge you and which relationships drain you, and setting the boundaries for that. And when I first was reading about this, I'm like, it's okay. So what this means is, which people are toxic and negative in my life, and, which ones do I need to get rid of? And that's not the case, because you can have a relationship that is loving, but you're still causing you to have a social rest deficit. And what do I mean by that? I think about it in the sense of, when you are in relationships where you're constantly giving and never receiving, and there's not this kind of back and forth of yin and yang, that's when you get into these moments of social rest deficits, because you have people in your life who are demanding and need you, and it's not, and they could be probably most likely the people who you love the most, and it doesn't mean you love them any less and you should get rid of them and they're toxic. I'm not saying that at all. They're not toxic people. They're not negative people. But there's something about being able to receive. There's something about not always giving. There's a beauty in that feeling of being in the presence of someone who gets you, someone where you don't have to put on the facade for, someone that recharges you. I have a friend who I love, who Linda is just one of those people where I could be in her presence and I just feel recharged. Not because she's a beautiful person and great energy, but when we're talking to each other, we recharge each other. It's like when I'm in her presence, if I just give her a hug, I feel recharged, because she's one of those people who, when I'm around, I feel recharged. And it's having those type of people in your life. So surrounding yourself with those type of people, foster relationships where you both feel fueled up, and you enjoy being in each other's presence, So that's something to think about, I don't know. It's something that has helped me, and it's something where I realize I need to find more people like that in my life, because I feel like I am someone who's constantly giving, and I don't have a lot of those relationships where I feel like I'm being fueled at the same time. And so if you're always giving and never receiving, you're most likely in your social rest is depleted, and you can feel exhausted, like me, and you're probably not setting boundaries and keeping them. And so again, sort of set healthy boundaries and keep them. Surround yourself with positive people, supportive people, and people that make you just feel good and recharged and loved. I think it's so important. I think that's something we just don't think about. Another form of rest is creative rest that we talked about. And this one is not just for creative. So if you're thinking, I'm not a creative, this doesn't count for me. No, it does. If you're someone who, problem solves, has to be innovative and think outside the box, this affects you too. So don't just, label yourself as a non-creative and think that, you can expend all this creative energy, because you can't. And the way I would explain this is, think about it is, how would I want to explain this? Creative rest allows you to be inspired. And what I mean by that is, have you ever been, I'm a person who loves to travel. And so I love being by water. Like being by water and being the sound of water energizes me. Being in nature, walking in the forest energizes me. And that's what that creative rest is. It's having, it's not even just being physical and mountains and forests and bodies of water, but it could be art, it could be music, it could be dance. And it's finding those, it's finding beauty in nature and in art that awakens you inside. It's something that makes you feel good. You can't explain it. I love being by the water. It just refuels me. It makes me feel a certain way, but I can't explain it. It's those moments of those type of experiences that awaken you, that you need to add in to help you, inspire you to do amazing things. I get so many great ideas when I'm just sitting at the beach, watching the tide go in and out, listening to the waves. For me, that is one of my ways of being creatively recharged. And so find out what it is that creatively recharges you. Is it, something, adding a picture of a place that brings you joy to your work or home space? Is it getting out in nature? Is it going to a museum? Is it going to the ballet? Whatever it is, we all need that. And I say that we all need it. We all, because all of us problem solve, whether you're a mom, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're just an employee, not just employee, but whether you're an employee, whether you're just anything in life. And like, especially if you're someone who is probably a people pleaser or someone who's always giving, whatever, it means that you're always probably problem solving for someone, if not yourself. You need that creative rest. You need that need time to be able to experience and enjoy the beauty of something else, which inspires you to be innovative, be that leader you're meant to be. So the next one I'm going to talk about is kind of like, I get it, but I don't get it. I'm going to be real. I get it, and I kind of don't get it. And it's spiritual rest. Spiritual rest is the way Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith talks about it is like nurturing that feeling of being belonging, feeling that something's bigger than you, that you're part of something bigger, knowing that, whether it's, God, source, universe, and it doesn't even have to be God, source, universe, just knowing that, you're a part of something bigger, and, you can be an atheist and still feel like, the greater humankind, and that feeling. And so it's not a religious form of rest. It is actually, and that's why it's spiritual versus, religious rest. So, because you can't be an atheist and still need and have, you can need spiritual rest, but also have a spiritual rest deficit. So it's like as if you, didn't believe in something, like there was nothing that you thought was bigger than you. Everything, everything's about me. There's something bigger in this world that you're working towards, or that something's bigger than you. And if you're, lacking in, realizing that, there's a discomfort. So with this one, I encourage people to, engage in something that's greater than yourself, that's outside of, your normal day-to-day life. Add prayer, add meditation, get involved in the community. And that's one of the ways to recharge your spiritual rest. And then the last rest I want to talk about is one that I feel like we suffer from and don't even pay attention, and that's sensory rest. And I think in the midst of COVID, I feel like we're struggling from it a little bit more, because I think we're just overly sensitized. I think we're on all these Zoom calls, we're constantly on our phones, we're constantly on our computers, and we're just overstimulated in so many different ways. But it goes beyond that. Like, think about it as, that friend who's a working mom who, she does everything. She has her kids. She's like, especially during COVID. So she's working from home. Her kids are home. Her kids are yelling, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." They're jumping on her. She has her boss who is demanding. She has all these meetings to get to. She's put in, for some god awful reason, the artificial lighting that we have in offices, because she likes that feeling at home. Not realizing that, she's always on the computer. She has all these notifications binging all day long. The smells of everything around her are getting to her. She's always playing music in the background, with notifications, and she's living in the city. So you're hearing ambulances going by. You're hearing all the noises of cars honking by. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's taking in, that sensory input is a lot. And, it can make someone really angry, irritable, anxious. They may not even realize that person who's constantly angry or irritable or anxious is because they're having all these excessive inputs of sensory. And we don't even realize it. Like, for me, perfect example, I went to a park yesterday. Like, I've been so tired this weekend that I went to a park, and I'm like, I'm just going to rest. I'm going to go to the park and I'm going to rest. What did I do at the park? Of course, wasn't resting. Like, I decided to read a book on Karuna Reiki. I decided to meditate. And then when I was like, okay, we're going to put all these things down. I'm really going to rest. And then I'm like, okay, what are the sounds? I'm hearing all these different, things I'm hearing. And what am I seeing? And what am I smelling? What am I feeling? And I wasn't allowing myself just to let go of all the senses around me. And that is not good. So, how do you deal with sensory rest? I encourage you to turn off the noise, sit in darkness, and just be. Take breaks and close your eyes throughout the day. Just literally take 5 minutes and just close your eyes and just shut down your thoughts as best as you can. Turn off your electronics at night. And I love putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb pretty early, and I put it on to a certain time in the morning. I'm not telling people because I don't want anyone to game my Do Not Disturb system. But I found that has been really helpful because before I was doing that, I would be waking up in the middle of the night because someone's sending me a notification. And that could be someone. It could be like Clubhouse notifications. It's not even hearing the notifications, seeing the constant Clubhouse notifications, constant Facebook notifications, Instagram notifications, seeing the things pop up on your phone and on your computer constantly is still a sensory situation that you're going through. It's still a sensory overload that you're dealing with. And when you're not understanding how these things are showing up in your life, and you're wondering why you're angry and stressed and irritable, yeah, because you're sorry, I was trying not to swear today. It's because you're overloaded. It's because you're overloaded, period. And so, I don't know. It's one of those things where all these types of sleeps matter. But what I wanted to point out was, I was listening to Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith talk about, the types of rest and the top, ranking them. And I thought the rank was pretty interesting. And at the lowest, so at the bottom of the list, if you looked at all 7 and you were supposed to rank them from, oh my God, I need to fix this ASAP, to, no, I kind of have this covered, whatever. At the bottom, I kind of have this covered. I'm doing pretty okay with it, was physical. And that makes sense. Because if you think about it, we all know we need sleep. We all know we thought was sleep and rest was mixed together. We're like, oh, we all know we need sleep and we need rest. And, we're doing these things. And so most of us have a pretty good sense and are pretty well versed in how to take care of our physical rest needs. Where we are struggling, and this is where I want to give us the top 3 things where we're struggling the most, is mental. And that shouldn't be surprising because, again, in COVID, when you can't go anywhere and there's no breaks and whatever, I used to use my commute as my form of rest mentally. I was like, oh, there's that, I'm driving, so can't be on the phone, can't be texting, can't be checking everything. And I would even turn off the music because I'm like, oh, I'm going to go a little step further and I'm going to rest my mind from listening to music, trying to listen to a podcast and just be in the space. But mental is the top one that most people struggle from. And so I, again, ask you to kind of think about what are ways that you can shut down your mind? What are ways to where you can find that peace and that rest in the mental aspect of your life, in that area of your life? The next one, number 2, is emotional. Not surprising because, again, when we have this, makeup that we're wearing all over our emotions, it's no surprise that, yeah, that's going to be a major one that we're struggling with because we're not being honest and we're not being authentic, and we're playing these roles that when you don't have a space to where you can be fully yourself, it's going to be a problem. And then the top 3, so it goes mental, emotional, and the next one is social, which kind of goes again in, if you're not surrounding yourself, if you're always giving and not receiving, you're not having people who pour into you. And that's what this all is. Let's kind of really break it down further. This is all about finding areas in your life where you're pouring out a lot of energy, and the rest is finding activities that pour back into you and finding ways to pour back in to refuel all of those, areas of your life. And so, mental, emotional, social are the top 3. If you kind of go back down the list, and if you want to know what the other ones were, there was a tie between sensory and creative, which makes sense. And then spiritual and physical the last. And I get why spiritual will be last, because most of us feel, whether, again, you're religious or not, because you don't have to be religious to have, spiritual rest. Most of us know that, we're just one small ripple in this big world. We're not the world. We're like one little drop in this big world. And so most of us have this sense of belonging to something or another part of our life. And so I wanted to kind of touch upon the different types of rest and like that everyone needs like ASAP and in order. But I also wanted to talk about something that I found that I was doing and I find a lot of other people do is, we think vacation is our game plan, is the best game plan for rest. And it's not. And I wanted to explain why your vacations aren't cutting it. And it, you're just like, oh, I just need a vacation. I just need to get away. That's the wrong mentality. It's not, vacations are great. I'm a strong believer. Like, that's why I plan these unplugged trips. Vacations are a great way to rest, and it's one form of rest, and add in different forms of rest. But oftentimes we're not doing it right. It can't be, first of all, it can't be your only form of rest because one vacation a year ain't cutting it. If you say, oh, I'm going to just do one vacation a year and then I'm going to be rested for the entire year, I'm calling BS on the whole shebang of everything because it's not. And even if you're doing one vacation a month, maybe that might help a little bit more. But again, it cannot be your end all for, pouring into the 7 different areas of your life where you need rest. Because most of the time, your vacations aren't cutting all 7. It may be cutting, the mental. It may be cutting the physical. It may be cutting the social, but it's not taking care of all 7 different aspects of rest that you need. The other thing I see when people go on vacation is you say, oh, I need a vacation. That's how I'm going to rest. And then you're going to every tour, you're at the club, you're, at the pool, you're taking all these social media pictures. You're overstimulated and not allowing the mind, body, and spirit to get any rest. And then you wonder why I just come back from vacation and I'm like, I just came back from the Maldives and I'm so tired. Girl, you're so tired because you didn't allow your body, your mind, or your spirit to rest. But you were on vacation and was supposed to rest. And then you need a rest from your vacation, which was supposed to be your rest. And you're wondering, but why is that? Now you know why. Because you're not doing it right. And you're using it as this end-all strategy to help and not realizing that it's not going to help all 7. Most likely it's not going to help all 7. So I want you guys to think about this. I want you to think about areas where you could be pouring. What areas are you pouring the most out of? And where do you need to replenish? What types of rest do you need to be focusing on right now? Like right now, if I had to look and think to myself, I need to focus in on the social. I need to focus in on I need to focus on the mental, definitely. I need to focus on the emotional. I would also say those are probably the top ones that I need to do, and maybe even physical, because like, again, I'm constantly always going. But ask yourself, what's really making me tired? Like, and it's not just physical. So know that figuring out what's really making you tired and knowing it's not just physical is a game changer. Take a moment and determine what's really weighing on you, and also know each person's capacity for these different types of rest and sleep or whatever is different. What works for you will be different for someone else. If you're someone who's an empath, you may be more sensitive to sensory input than someone who is a people pleaser who is going to be really focused in on having issues around their emotional rest. And so being honest with yourself again and kind of recognizing that your rest need for more sensory rest may be different than someone else. And that's okay. Because we're not all like these little, human robots and doing our thing. No, we're different people. We all have different needs. We constantly allow ourselves to be overstimulated. And it's time to start changing that. It's time to start figuring out, how do people pull on our social energy? And what is it that we need? So I hope you got something out of this. I'm going to go continue trying to rest more in the different areas of my life so I can be a better person, so I can show up better for you, but also for me. So I love y'all, and I will talk to you next week. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.